Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. For your information, we'll be recording this webinar, and if you have any questions, you can submit them to the panelists via the chat button in the upper left-hand corner. Might be somewhere else on your screen, depending on your platform or operating system, but there is a chat button for submitting questions, and we will address them at the end. So I'm Jeff Whitehead. I'm the CTO and co-founder here at Zetta. I've been working in IT for longer than I care to admit at this point, 20 years. My career in Silicon Valley started at a small startup called Netscape, where I was one of a few people to help run the website, which was the largest in the world at the time, quickly got dwarfed by others. Yahoo was a couple of guys that were borrowing some cubicles from us back then. I was also the first sysadmin at Opinions that became part of Shopping.com, that became part of eBay. Later in my career, I started a company, got acquired by Shutterfly, and went on to become the CIO of Shutterfly, which is a manufacturing and commercial printing business for photos. And that's where I really got interested in large-scale data storage, because we had petabytes of customers' images, photos, photography, and such. And about 8 years ago, started this company called Zetta, because I really felt that storage had kind of been the same for that entire 20 years. You know, we'd seen rapid changes in operating systems, CPUs got faster, memory got bigger, all the tools got better, the internet got much more usable and polished, but storage was always kind of the same thing. You'd buy your sand, you'd carve it up into ones, or you'd use a bunch of plain old disks. And I thought there'd be an opportunity to improve, not necessarily the storage technology itself, that's the realm of Seagate and IBM and materials researchers, but the storage management function, how you get a hold of and protect and keep that data safe. So today we're going to be talking about why you need disaster recovery, and then what is true disaster recovery? How do you know that you've got your disaster recovery set up to do it well? Then we've got a bit of a reality check, a way of testing your notions of disaster recovery and making sure you're covering all the aspects. We're going to have a Q&A and then a demo of our disaster recovery product, which we've just launched, and then Q&A at the end. So one thing to keep in mind is that you as an IT professional are dealing with disasters every day already right now. A lot of people think of disasters only as the earthquake or the building burns down. But if a user loses their laptop, or their hard drive goes bad, or they get a CryptoLocker virus, that's a disaster for them. And so I tend to classify a disaster as any type of project that has a negative impact where you have no control over the timing. And because you have no control over when this disaster might occur, you need to get prepared for it ahead of time. So it's worth noting, the most common thing is something small. User deletes a file, or they lose their phone, what have you. Then somewhere in the middle is a server blows up, maybe your SAN gets corrupted, or you have to restore something from a backup. And at the least common end is the natural disaster, the large-scale power outage, the influenza pandemic, the regional chemical spill, those types of things that are really kind of outside of the scope of what most IT people think about, because it's not part of the day-to-day. But the key here is you have to be able to cover all of these scenarios, and you have to cover all of them well. If you go back 10 years, it was very common for the only copy of backups to be on a set of tapes that was off-site. And so from that scenario, restoring a user's file was a real pain, because you had to get the tapes back and then would restore them. And so they'd kind of be like, oh, well, was that file really important? Do you really need it? And you kind of chastise the user, don't do this again, because it's a big pain to get this back. Good backup systems make it easy to recover that single file, and preferentially even give them the ability to restore it themselves. And then that same system really needs to be able to handle that middle case, and then of course the complete site destruction. So when you're evaluating your backup and data protection posture, you really have to look at not only the types of things that can happen to you, but also the frequency at which they occur, and then also the impact of what happens should they occur. So this is the reality check, is do you have a true disaster recovery solution? So if the bad thing happens, is your business, is your IT department, are you ready for to do the things that's necessary to get that business back up and running, or at least, you know, keep you in business? It may not be get you back to 100%, but can you operate perhaps in some slightly degraded or a little bit more of a few extra hurdles to go through mode so that you can keep your business running? So the first thing I'll say, if it's not offsite, it's not disaster recovery. You know, buildings do burn down, not that often, but you want to have, you know, earthquakes do happen. Again, not that often, but when they do, they can have a large impact and take days or weeks if your building gets red tagged, where they won't let people to go back into it after the earthquake. And it's really not so much the probability of the disaster here, it's the stakes. You know, if you lose everything, you're probably going to be out of business at that point. If not, you'll take a huge, you know, reputational impact. And there's this old adage that's been used in the IT space for a long time. That's, you have 3 copies of any critical data on 2 different pieces of media, one of which needs to be offsite. And I'm a big fan of having your data replicated offsite, having big pipes so that your data is offsite immediately, and that way you can fail over to it. Secondly, if it's not tested, it's not disaster recovery. I think a lot of people have gone through the experience where they thought they had good backups. They go to do a restore and then find that, hey, we didn't actually have good backups here. For disaster recovery, there's even more moving pieces. You need to test all the applications, preferably with your end users, in the way they're actually going to be used. This means different things for different businesses. You know, if you are a company that handles a lot of paper and needs to print things out, if your main office burns down, well, they need to know how to go to FedEx office or Kinko's or what have you to be able to print their documents and mail them out. So this may involve more business processes to technology-related activities, things like printing or receiving mail or handling funds transfers from banks, that type of thing, that you're going to need to involve your stakeholders with to really understand what are the things that we can put on pause for a little while if a disaster occurs, what are the things we need to handle on an hourly or daily basis that needs to keep running. And as IT professional, you probably don't know all the ins and outs of every single system there, and that's why you got to enlist your stakeholders in helping this testing and have them actually use it as a test to make sure you're good to go ahead of time. Another area I've seen that has tripped up a lot of people is the notion of performance during disaster. If you have 100 servers and try to, they're all virtual and they're running on, say, 10 bare metal boxes for hosting those hypervisors, if you try to fill this over to one box, it might work, but it's going to work very, very slowly. And so there's a lot of appliances out there that provide disaster recovery functionality, meaning you can fail over a machine to it, but they're limited in terms of their capacity, in terms of CPU and RAM, and certainly IOs per second. And so what you need to do is actually test your applications and make sure that they perform at the level that you need them to, because if it's up but it's so slow that it's unusable, it's not really up at that point. Or if they can only get half as much work done throughout the day than they normally would, then you're halfway down as opposed to truly, recovered from that disaster. Documentation for disaster recovery is important. A lot of times auditors and such will want to see a documented disaster recovery plan, so will customers or sometimes vendors, depending on the nature of the relationship. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's a really bad day if the outage is a large-scale power outage and your only copies of your phone tree are inside your Active Directory and you don't know how to get a hold of the right person to get your network back up. So really it's important to have some amount of hard copy printed documentation, at the very least a phone tree. And then also keep in mind, depending on the nature of the disaster, you may not have first pick of who's going to be implementing the recovery. So, your star network guy may be stuck, in an airport in a foreign country or something, depending on the nature of the disaster. And so you need somebody whoever is available be able to implement your disaster recovery plan. And so having your plan written down, and ideally this would be part of the test when you do your testing, is have someone other than the person who designed the plan actually test the recovery is an important thing to consider. And lastly, if it doesn't meet your needs, it's not disaster recovery. And this is where most disaster recovery tests will evidence flaws the first time. If you're familiar with the concept of, if you live in earthquake country like we do here in California, you're supposed to have a 72-hour go bag. That's something where you have your clothes and food and medicines and water so that you can survive out of that bag for 72 hours. And if you have kids, well, they grow. And so one of the things that happens is you open up your bag and you realize all the clothes are too small and you haven't kept it up to date. And so you really need to test your disaster recovery plan over time as your applications evolve, as new operating systems come out, as new requirements and user load gets added. And in particular, especially for a cloud-hosted disaster recovery solution, you need to pay particular attention to your VPN options. For some scenarios, if you have multiple branch offices, your users can go to a different office and potentially and work there. But in that case, you need a site-to-site VPN. For other options, if there's a disaster, sending people to Starbucks and using their Wi-Fi may be a reasonable solution if you've got a smaller distributed workforce. But they're going to need that VPN client to be able to get into the environment as if they were, operating inside the office. So our disaster recovery product is layered on top of our backup product. We've been backing up images for many years, and really the secret sauce that we've added here are a lot of these network problems that other products have defined as out of scope. Even for the very high-end products, they say, go buy a VPN solution from Juniper or Cisco. And a lot of these products can be relatively complicated, which goes back to my earlier point, and the person who is activating the DR plan may not be your chief network architect. And so we really try to make this easy to use so that anyone can activate the plan. There is a lot of work on the upfront setup in terms of setting up each customer's virtual cloud, which includes a virtual firewall and VPN endpoints. But once it's set up, it's quite easy to activate and fail over to. And then also we realize that for the Fortune 500 companies, they can go hire, Deloitte or Accenture or IBM to create a disaster recovery plan for them. For many of the folks who are in the MSP market or small, medium enterprise, they don't have those resources available to them. And so we're providing setup assistance and best practices to our customers, more so I think you'll find from any other vendor that can really get you quickly down the path towards having something that meets your needs. So this is a quick little diagram of what we offer in terms of disaster recovery. It really is just click a button, and once you have an image that's backed up, we attach it to our virtualization fabric and boot it up. It boots up in less than 5 minutes. Usually it's on the order of about 2, but 5 is where we're trying to set our expectations. We will have automated testing in terms of booting all the images by Q4 and taking a screenshot and making sure that works. Now that's not a substitute for actual testing because it's very easy to get your operating system booted up but not have your application work because the database is misconfigured or what have you. But it is a start. And the other thing that's worth noting is that we have effectively unlimited scalability for small and medium enterprises. If you need 20 servers in your environment and then disaster occurs and you realize you need 40, that's something we can facilitate. And we provide real engineer level 24/7 support for backup, failover, and failback. And then it's more detailed than we really have time to go into today, but I think you'll find a lot of enterprise type features, hopefully not at the cost of making it too complicated, but we do have the option of having an always-on Active Directory server where you can synchronize your Active Directory with our server in the cloud. And that allows us to have that in place so when you boot up your virtual machines, they can bind to the domain easily and not have to hunt around for credentials or dependencies. And we can also use that for VPN authentication, so users have effectively a single sign-on for the whole solution. And we're different from the other folks that are out there, and that we're 100% cloud-based. We provide the service end-to-end. We've got that fast RTO, And then we have the network configuration that the other folks just don't provide. The network firewall, the VPN, and it's all set up front and documented for you. And we provide sufficient amount of resources for you to actually run your applications, even higher I/O applications, in a way that you'd want to run them in your own facility. And it's a cost-effective solution. So we'll turn this over to Graham now, who's one of our support and systems engineers, and give you a demo.
Hey guys, just 1 second here. So this is our systems page here. It's easy to use one-stop shop portal. It's where you see all of your systems, regardless of location. So again, they can be at multiple different sites, one place to go to see everything. I'm not going to go too far into the configuration portion here for image backup. You just set up an image backup task here and enable it for disaster recovery. Enabling it is very, very simple. It's just clicking Add to Disaster Recovery Plan here. You select how much RAM resources you want to dedicate to this system. So this one, let's add 8 gigs of RAM. You hit Save. And there you can then go to the disaster recovery page. Here you can see our various VPN options. Again, we have the point to site, which Jeff mentioned earlier. Again, you know, building gets red tagged, no one can go in. You need people to go to their Starbucks or their house or whatever to connect. They have this point-to-site VPN where they log in from their laptop and they have full access to any of the systems you have booted in the cloud. And the site-to-site VPN here is more, you know, a server goes down, the whole building goes down, and you need access from a remote site to connect in.
And I'll jump in for a second and also say IP takeover is something I didn't mention. And that's where, say you've got 10 servers in your office, but you only want to fail over one of them to the cloud. An IP takeover is a way of transparently proxying packets bound to that IP address across the VPN tunnel to the instance of the server that's running in our cloud. So it's for that use case that's in the middle there, not the single file is deleted, not the whole site's destroyed, but just I've got one server that's down, I need to fail that over to the cloud.
Okay, and the next portion here is the network configuration port forwarding. So from here we have the virtual firewalls enabled. Again, this is like pretty much any router interface that you're going to see for port forwarding rules. You just name the rule, you say what port externally, where it goes internally, which protocol you want, and you can either update or add new or delete existing ones. It's important to note this external port IP address here is something that you keep. So once you sign up with us and get set up, that's something that you can keep for your records. It's not going to be changing. So again, once the system is booted up in the cloud, you need to be able to access it. So this is a system we have booted up in our cloud. Again, this is a live production environment. We focused on ease of use and making sure this all works quickly and easily. Copy and paste this password here. And again, the point of this is to get access to a remote console. And this is a true console. You can access it even when your network isn't set up yet. You can use this to get everything configured and ready to go. Once everything's ready, you can do, you know, regular remote desktop into the systems and have full access to them. It's just going to take a second here. It just gets ready. And then here you'll be able to see this is a complete version of the system. It's like if it was on our network, you have full access to it. And I'm able to log in and have full access to the system. It has full network access. I can go to the internet. I can configure my network. I can configure any applications I need to be able to work and go through the disaster recovery planning process. So this is the fully functioning system. Going back to the recovery portion. Here are the idle VMs. So these are the systems that have been configured. Again, this one here has not been backed up yet. We just activated it. This one's already here. I can adjust how much RAM I have allocated to it, and I can activate it here. You activate it, you select what version you want to boot from. And again, this process takes less than 5 minutes. Again, it's usually closer to around 2, but we like to set expectations at around 5 minutes, just to ensure everything is good there. So again, the biggest takeaway here is we try to keep everything as simple as possible. It's a one-button press here. If you have multiple servers go down, again, a whole system, a whole building burns down, you need to activate everything. You have this activate all button, which activates everything in parallel. Get all of your systems up and running as quickly as possible. Again, we emphasized on ease of use and, again, performance, making sure that not only do we get your data and get your systems booted up in the cloud, but it's actually functional and usable systems. So that's it for the demo. I'm going to hand things off to Joe.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Joe Nagy. I lead sales here at Zetta. And first off, just wanted to thank you all for coming and listening to our CTO as well as our senior systems engineer, Graham, talk about both product and show you what's going on. Again, we think partnering with Zetta is a real good choice. Of course, we would, but we think we have some fairly strong reasons for that as well. One, as you've seen, is the ease of use in creating the solution. So as you're providing this to your own clients, you have the ability to easily support them should they become victims of some type of disaster. And the key there, of course, is that you're offering a solution that offers quite a bit of performance. I mean, the system has been set up so that they can actually do the work that they need to do rather than simply check a box that they have a disaster recovery solution set up. So I think you've heard from Jeff's background that he's been involved in this type of solution for a number of years. And essentially, what we've done is, what's nice about having the founder of the company build the solution is he gets to build it how he would want to buy it. And so he's built it as something that he would want to support his own businesses as he's gone forward. This doesn't come from a vacuum; it comes from a long experience, and we think that's pretty important. The key with an easy-to-use system, one that provides a lot of performance, is in the end it provides you with better margins. So it allows you to support your clients much more easily. On the pricing front, we provide very simple pricing model with no hidden costs. And part of that whole process is providing you with professional services that you can use to help set your customers up. And then ongoing support, as Jeff mentioned, 24/7, 365, based right here in Sunnyvale, California, by engineer-level folks. So, and then the system itself is set with enterprise-grade security and reliability. And really what that means is that the solution has been built to handle data sets of above a terabyte. And we have clients of our own that are securing hundreds of terabytes of data on our system. And they're doing it in a compliant way. So we're talking about HIPAA compliance, FERPA compliance, SOX compliance, et cetera. We're happy to walk through all the compliance that we offer, as well as the security that is both SSL in flight and then the SAE 16 SOC audited data centers that we use both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. So I think the next step is to turn it all over to you guys for questions and answers. We certainly welcome any questions that you have that weren't followed up on. I want to make sure that you get a lot of value out of this session. And again, thank you for coming. So one of the questions that we have for Jeff is, Jeff, we talked about sizing the servers as well as what the network configuration is. Are one of those two things more important than the other?
Well, they're both important. Obviously, if you can't get to the server, it doesn't matter how fast it is. But if the server can't handle the workload, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you go on to Google and search around for cloud failover, especially with SQL Server, you find a lot of people try to migrate that to EC2, and then find, it's like a little bit like swimming through Jello. Doesn't quite perform the way they want it to without going to extra steps and extra costs in terms of provisioning some higher performance SSD or block storage.
Thanks, Jeff. I think one of the other questions that's that just popped up as well is that sounds great, but getting clients to kind of buy into that and buy into that with dollars rather than just a nod of the head, yeah, that's important, is something that's challenging. What advice do you have about proving the value of disaster recovery to clients? Because since you've had to do it since you've had to do it up the stream in the organizations you've worked with.
Well, it's interesting because actually for a lot of businesses, disaster recovery is being driven by boards as they become more aware of these kinds of things. There's incidents in the news. Things like Hurricane Katrina was a wake-up call for a lot of companies. But the easiest way to determine the value of disaster recovery is to interview your stakeholders, ask them what the cost of downtime of each system would be. It's actually a little bit of a complicated process because you tend to get emotional answers. Like if the phone is down for 5 minutes, we lose $1 million. That's probably not accurate, especially if the company doesn't make $1 million in a day. But there is also reputational damage to consider. So really the question to have disaster recovery or not, to me, it's a little bit like, do you want to have backups or not? You really don't. It's really not really a question at this point. And I think that what you can do now is you can have backups that give you disaster recovery for the same cost and complexity, both in terms of hard dollars and soft people costs of just doing backup. So why wouldn't you do both?
So another question that's just popped up is, what's the number one thing you've seen IT professionals miss when it comes to planning these types of things?
The number one thing I see IT professionals miss when it comes to planning these types of things are things that are outside of the scope of pure IT. It's things like, oh, we didn't realize we need to print checks and mail them, or it's we didn't realize we have to get this particular file uploaded to our payroll provider, on a certain day every month, otherwise people don't get paid. There's a lot of processes that are handled that are dependent on technology, but are not necessarily technology driven within a company, and getting a handle on all those things and making sure there's no mission critical gaps in those is really the key challenge. And it may not be something that IT frankly should be driving at the end of the day. IT should be there as a service provider to understand the needs of the business and deliver solutions against those requirements. But the overall needs of the business is determined by the business.
Okay. Oh, and it looks like, here's one that I can handle. Speaking of handling, someone asked, how do you handle pricing? And pricing is relatively simple for us. We charge based on the amount of stuff you want to store, a technical term for the sales guy here, as well as how much RAM you need in order to make the servers do what you want them to do. And then if you're running, if there's a couple of other options as well, if you're looking for the Active Directory server to be constantly updated, as Jeff mentioned, there's a price for that. And then we do offer an IP address for each MSP and for each MSP's sub-organization above one each. We look at charging for that as well. But so it's pretty simple. For the most part, it's what do you have to store, how much of that gets stored, and then how much RAM do you need to run the applications that access the data. So that's pretty simple.
Another question came in. It says license seat-based or site-based, and do you have to have an agent on all endpoints? So the licensing is based on the space that's used, the aggregate storage, and the aggregate amount of RAM that's needed to service those machines. So it's really, unfortunately, it's neither. But we think it's a pretty easy way to understand once you start thinking about it that way. We provision each customer a cloud and then allocate resources to those cloud, and that's yours to use however you want. And then as far as having an agent on all endpoints, for physical servers, yes, you need to have an agent on the endpoints. For virtual servers, we have a virtual appliance that will look across your vCenter and back all those up through one virtual appliance. And then for Hyper-V, we also have a module where if you put it on the storage server hosting the VHDs or VHDXs for Hyper-V, that we can back those up in aggregate to our disaster recovery cloud. In the terms of the recovery solution, whether the endpoints need a agent or not is going to be dependent on whether they need to have point-to-site VPN connectivity or not. If there is, we have a virtual network appliance as well that provides things like IP takeover and site-to-site. It's a fully functional enterprise-grade software router that can pretty much be a Swiss Army knife for any network option that you need. So in many cases, you don't need an endpoint on every laptop or desktop to access the cloud, but in some cases that will be the preferred deployment. And really getting to those details is where our support and services come in, and we want to give you the right solution for you, not try to cram you into a one-size-fits-all solution. Okay, well, thank you for, I think that's all of our questions unless we have any more. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, you can contact us, partners@zetta.com. We have a web page that's up on display now. Also, my email address was on the first slide. It's jw@zetta.com. I do read and respond to most of my email. So if you have any further questions, feel free to send them to me, and we will get back to you. Thank you.